This is StRest. I'm Kirsten Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest.
Hi, guys. So I don't think I've ever been this nervous about an interview. I mean, probably early in my career, but I've interviewed a lot of celebrities and a lot of, I don't know, quote unquote, big in the world people. But I haven't really felt like I felt for the last couple of days as I was getting ready to do this interview with Jamie Winship. So I haven't jumped on with him yet. I usually record kind of the openings and the previews after, but I kind of wanted to share my heart in this situation right now because it is a big example of listening to the Lord and how he leads and being very cognizant of that. And that's what I'm doing right now because I'm a little bit nervous. This guy has had such an impact on our world and such an impact on me and my faith and what I'm able to give back to you. So join me as I get a chance to interview kind of the real life Jason born for Jesus, Jamie Winship. Well, right away, I want to pray for us because I want to see where the Lord is going to lead us. So Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing Jamie to this podcast to be able to speak truth into so many people out there who are to have a reduction in fear, to be able to hear you better. Lord, I pray that you just speak through the two of us as we can get out to as many as people as possible. And thank you so much for this time. Amen. Jamie Winship, I absolutely blessed to have you here. You have inspired me and my entire family from your background as a Metro DC cop and then in the CIA, and really how the Lord has used you in conflict zones, but also more importantly, right here at home, one-on-one in the lives of people. The first thing that I want to ask you before we dive into everything is how can we better hear the Lord?
Well, I mean, like simple answer is listen.
Yeah.
But that's the difficulty, right? Is we're not, I feel like we're not paying attention for lots of different reasons. One thing is that fear shuts down a person's ability to receive anything, any new information, any new ways of thinking. And so if you're living in sort of a constant state of low boil fear, you're actually not receptive. You're looking for certainty. You're looking for things that you know will work. You're self-protecting and self-promoting. And so you're not living a life of receptivity, basically, is it. So it's like if I'm training a new person on our team or something and they're not receiving what I'm saying, the very first thing I ask them is, tell me what you're afraid of. What's this affective filter that's just up all the time to protect yourself? Like, where did you learn to be afraid of whatever it is that you're afraid of? And let's talk about what that is. Once that affective filters down and this receptivity is opened up, then you start working on the dynamics of listening. Like, what does it mean to pay attention? Are you asking questions in life that require answers? Most of us aren't. We're not questioning anything. We're just, okay, this is the way that works. This is what this is. Okay, we accept that. And really, unless you ask a question, there's no search for answers for anything. It's all this kind of like, that's just the way it's going to be and the way it is. And so first, lower that affective fear filter. That's why my main question to people anywhere, total strangers, that just immediately connects us, is just tell me what you're most afraid of in life. Like, what are you really afraid of? And then all fear is learned. So where did you learn to be afraid of that? Just those simple, basic questions. It just opens a person up. And this is what Jesus is doing with people all the time. He's taken away their fear. I'm here to take away the things that you're most afraid of in life.
It's so amazing to me that you speak and help people and counsel people through fear, and with your new book and with your speaking. But you have literally lived some of the most fearful situations I think a human can live. What you're doing now, what are some of the big changing points in your life that led to this?
Well, yeah, I mean, even like that kind of idea. So like if I'm in a scenario where because people do ask me this all the time. They're like, how did you do what you did in those situations? And weren't you afraid? I am afraid. Fear is an emotion that God has given us for our value. It's not an enemy. Actually, nobody has the power to make you afraid. Nobody has the power to make you afraid. We make ourselves afraid. We are the ones that create the fear. And the fear is just a warning light saying that what you're about to do or the way that you're thinking is harmful and wrong. That's what fear is all about. Once you don't want to address the fear, you want to address what the fear is pointing to. So what is the fear pointing to? What am I believing that's not true? The fear is like the flash that says, you need to pay attention right now to what you believe and what you think about God, about yourself, about other people, because the way you are perceiving the situation is harmful in the sense of it's not true. So, so one of the examples I talk about, I mean, this is in my newer book, but probably the biggest like vocational, promotional experiences that I've been in have, when you look at them from the outside, they look like, wow, why did you get in the car with those guys? And why did you move your family into that war zone? And the fear that would come up me in those situations, like these guys inviting me to get in the car with them in the Middle East, which you never do with strange. Yeah. I mean, it's like the dumbest possible thing you would ever do. You wouldn't even pray about it. All your training, anybody in our team in the Middle East that was killed or hurt was because they were in a car that they shouldn't have been in, or in a car in a situation they shouldn't have been in. So all your training is never get in the car. Don't get in a position you can't get out of. Just wait for another date. And so when these guys that we were looking for that I wanted to make contact with, that I knew were like not good people, when they pull up on the side of the street and say, hey, we want you to get in the car with us. I mean, I don't have to pray about that. I don't have to think about that. It's just no. But then I feel fearful in that situation. And so if I am just going by my own sort of common sense, it's like, I'm afraid to get in the car. That's smart. Walk away. Unless you believe in God. Then with God, it's like, what am I afraid of right now? Like you search me, you tell me. Why am I afraid to get in that car? Like, why would I be afraid of that? What if getting in the car is the wisest thing to do, but my filter is like, no way, I see the scenario, move away from it as fast as you can to protect your own life. Well, when you're talking to God and your goal is to protect your own life, you're already moving in opposition to how he thinks, right? Do you see? So when I prayed about that situation, even though I'm actually backing away because I'm like, there's no way I'm getting in with you guys, I am asking the Lord a question, which allows me to hear. Otherwise, I would just protect myself and I don't need to ask him a question. So my question is, it wasn't even a good question. It was more like, you don't want me to get in that car, do you? You wouldn't want me to get in that car, would you?
You're putting words in the Lord's mouth.
Yeah, just giving him a direction to go when he answers me, right? And then very clearly in my mind is, you need to get in the car. You need to get in that car. And so, of course, I don't accept that immediately. So I pray again in case I'm hearing wrong, because surely God wouldn't say that. And so then, no, I want you to get in the car. So what am I afraid of? I'm just as afraid of getting in that car as if God invites a person who's scared to speak in public to stand up and give a speech. It's the same. It's no greater. I'm not in a more dangerous situation. Only in our human perspective am I. What I'm afraid of is failure. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of dying in that situation. Humans are in situations all the time where they're afraid of dying of rejection, of dying of powerlessness, of dying of failing. That's the deep fear. Am I afraid of physical death? I mean, that's going to happen sooner or later. What am I afraid of? Why wouldn't I get in that car with those guys? Here's another fear I have, that God can't go with me in that situation. That somehow when I sit in that car, he's like, wow, you went beyond my ability to help you now. Which is a very deep belief that we have that we'll never talk about. We believe there's places God can't go and protect us. So we have to not go there. We have to protect ourselves because he's not going to do it. And so when I'm that debate in my mind is like, the confession to me is like, if I get in that car, am I beyond your being with me? Are they now more powerful than you? That's really what I believe. And that's what God wants to talk to me about, not the guys, not the situation. What do you believe about me? Like, do you not believe I'll never leave you nor forsake you? You don't believe that because if you did, this wouldn't be that big of a deal to you. Do you see? That's where he wants to go.
You get in the car and tell us the end of the story.
So I get it. I don't know if you knew that story. So these are bad people. I know they've already been incarcerated in other countries. And my job is to find this one lead guy and to like work him out of the terrorist world. And so he's the front seat passenger in the car, and there's 4 guys. And so they pull up and I recognize him, and he says, "Hey, where are you going?" It's 10 o'clock at night. We're in the Middle East in a city. And I said, "I'm just going home." He said, "Get in the car. We'll give you a ride home." And I'm like, "No, thanks." And then I start this process of like, "Lord, do you want me to get in this car? Because I am trying to contact this guy. I do want to make contact. I just don't want to do it in this scenario. I want to control the scenario, right? So I have to be in control." So I prayed, and it's a very clear idea in my mind. I'm inviting you into the car. I'm inviting you into the car. It doesn't matter about them. So then finally I say to the guys, "Okay, I'll take a ride home." But what I don't want to do is get in the back seat in between the 2 in the back. We call that the coffin. You don't want to get in the coffin. But what can I do? Yeah, what can I do? So, and that's immediately where they put me, right in between the 2 guys in the back seat. So I get in, they close the door, and they said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "That way." They make a U-turn and go the other way. They go the opposite direction of what I say. And so now I know, okay, they're going to play a game with me. They're going to this is what they do. They're going to try and increase the fear level in me. It's all part of just a game. And so the interesting thing, I say this all the time when we're training people, is terrorism means fear. That's all it is. A terrorist is a person who's terrified of their life. And so they do whatever they can to be seen and gain control, whatever it is, whatever they can do. And sometimes that's suicide. Sometimes that's whatever. So if I'm a counter-terrorist, I'm a counter-fear expert. Because the way to stop terrorism is to take away terror. So as a believer, I know the only thing that takes away fear or terror in a person, only one thing: perfect love. So as a counter-terrorist, as a counter-fear person, I have to be an expert in pure love. Because that's the only thing that's going to rescue these guys is not my love, but God's love for them that they can see. That takes away their fear, which ends the conflict. That's how simple that is. But I'm terrified, they're terrified, we're all terrified, so we just fight each other and kill each other. That's our strategy, which the enemy loves. So they turn around to go the direction. I'm like, okay, here, they're going to try and raise the fear level in me. This is the game. How do I not freak out when they go the other way? Is because Christ is with me, and Jesus only operates in the present tense. So if I let my brain go 5 minutes forward into the future, then I'm in the hypothetical, and the enemy loves our hypothetical scenarios because God doesn't work in the hypothetical. It's all Satan territory. Once you start, well, what if, boom, you're gone. So Isaiah says, "He is kept in perfect peace, whose mind and imagination is fixed on me." So if I start thinking, what are these guys going to do in the future? Then there's a voice that says they're going to kill you. And then there's another voice that says you can't die. So which one do I believe? If I believe you cannot die, which is true, then I have a sense of peace. If I believe they're going to kill you, now I got to self-protect and self-promote. Now it's all on me. Now I'm freaked out. But we're so trained to self-protect and self-promote and not to Jesus said you can't die. But I don't believe it. There's the fear. The fear is you don't believe what's true right now. And only the truth can set you free right now. Right? And that's the depth of spirituality. But all people are dealing with this lie all the time in every situation. It's no greater in that one. So I just say, Lord, keep me in the present tense. I'm taking my thoughts captive. I'm submitting them to Jesus. And so just keep me in the present tense. I'm alive right now. I'm in with these guys. I want to be with them. This could be great. And I just stay in the present tense, and they drive into the part of the city where all the radicals live. And I'm like, wow. And then they go out into the desert. That's another level. They're cranking up the fear. They're going out into the desert.
Yeah.
So same thing. Don't get 2 minutes ahead. Stay right in the car. Jesus is right here with you. You're right here with me. And I keep asking the two questions that the whole book of Acts is, God, what do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do right now?
Yeah.
Because I know how to get out of the car. We're trained how to I can get out of that car. I know how to get out of it. But it's not, is that the right thing to do? Right? Is that because if I get out of the car, I'm pretty sure that these guys already know where I live. They already know where my wife is. I know they do. They're smart. So if I disable them and get out of the car, I'm in the middle of the desert with nowhere to go. And now I've created the conflict at a greater level. I've elevated the conflict and the terror. So I'm just asking, Lord, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Staying present, feeling his presence. And then the guy in the front seat, the leader, turns around and looks at me while we're driving, and he says, we know who you are, and we know why you're here, and we're going to take you out and put you on trial in the desert because it's sacred to him, and we're going to execute you there. And then he said, right. And then he says to me, what do you think of that? What do you think of that? And again, it's him trying to manipulate me through fear, which is how the enemy works, right? That's how the liar works. Satan, I mean. And so I said to the Lord, what do you want me to say back to this? What do you want me to think? What do you want me to say? Because Jesus said it, when you stand before these others, leaders or whatever, don't worry about what to say. The Spirit will give it to you in the moment. Is that a true verse or a false verse? Most of us don't think that's true. We avoid that at all costs, but I have the chance to see if it's true or not. And so it's an opportunity. And so I have this idea, this in my mind, tell the guy you're not afraid of him and that you want to be his friend. My challenge is that those are both false. Those are both false statements. I am afraid of him, and he's the last person I want to be friends with. And the Lord says to me, but say it as if it's true, which is called faith. Faith is the substance of the things you hope for, the evidence of the things you don't see yet. Say it like it's true and let it become true. Just like God speaks things into existence, speak it into existence. And so I said to the guy, I said, well, actually, I'm not afraid of you, and I'm here to be your friend, not your enemy. And as soon as I said it, it's like creation happened. It's like it affected all four of the men in the car because they are human, which we forget. They are human beings, and they're afraid also. And so when I said, I'm not afraid of you, it said to them, there's a place where there's no fear, even in this conflict level. And there can be friendship in it. It just affected them in this weird way. And so the lead guy smiled at me, and he said, and I could feel like a victory just happened here right now in some spiritual way. And he said to me, oh, you're not afraid of me? Oh, you want to be my friend? Okay. Turn the car around. They turn the car around. They drive back into the city. And he says to me, we're going to take you to your home. They knew right where I live. We know your wife is here with you. We're going to drop you off tonight. We're going to send a car tomorrow night with just a driver. You bring your wife. You get in that car with that driver and go wherever that driver takes you, and trust me that we're not going to kill both of you together. If you want to be my friend and you're not afraid of me, then show me. And I said, okay. So they drive me back. They drop me off. And I go in, and, my wife is, how was your day? And I was like, well, it was interesting.
It was.
We got an invitation for tomorrow night that's going to be interesting. And then I tell her what happened. Right. And then I say to her, tomorrow when that car comes, I'm going. You don't have to. I'm not going to make you, but I need to go. I would love it if you went with me, but that's between you and the Lord, And so she's thinking about our kids and all this stuff. And so she prayed, and my wife is Jewish, and we're in an Arab Muslim radical situation. So it's another level for her because of Jewishness. And so she decides, she prays, and she feels like the Lord is inviting her. We call it an invitation. It's just an invitation. The Lord's inviting us in. If he's not inviting us in, we don't go. If he is inviting us in, we go. And so the car came, we went together. This guy drives us way up into the mountains, and he drives us to the headquarters of this organization, which is, in my vocation, gold mine. Like you would
It's where you want to be.
Yeah, it's exactly where you want to be, but it's not the way I wanted to get there, which is God's expertise. He's the mystery of how to go from here to here. And so anyway, we went in there, and it was a very long and difficult night. But through the night, the women took Donna. She went off with the women, as is the custom, and I stayed with the men. And through the night, the Lord, because I told them I wasn't afraid of them and wanted to be their friend, they let me speak. They're like, okay, what do you want to say? And so then I said, okay, Lord, what would you say here now? And we just started into it. And I asked them, tell me what you guys are afraid of. What do you want? What are you afraid of? And what you're trying to do is lead the other human into confession. Because once you move into confession, then the spirit moves, because now you're doing truth telling. Most people never engage in truth telling. Tell me what you're afraid of. We're afraid that we're powerless and alone. Once they said that, I knew God was going to take this whole thing into repentance and redemption. So truth, we call it truth tell, mind change, form change. Once you tell the truth to the Lord, then he can tell you his truth back. And that's what causes you to turn and go in the new way. But if you never tell him the truth, like, Lord, I'm just afraid that you aren't here. Like, that is what I'm afraid of. That's real confession. If I just say, I'm sorry, I'm afraid, God can't do anything with that statement because it's not saying anything. I'm really sorry. Help me not to be afraid. Waste of time. Why are you afraid? Because I don't believe what you say about being with me. Okay, we can work with that one. Let me have that fear. Here, let me speak back into that fear and now turn and walk in the new way of what I said. So it's truth tell, mind change, form change, confession, repentance, transformation. So we just try and change the forms of things with nobody really ever telling the truth and nobody's mind changing. So once we got into that, they're afraid of this, then I said, okay, let's ask, because everything you're doing to get out of that fear is killing your people. It's killing my people. It's killing your people. It's not working. None of us is going to win in this. We never have. We never will. So let's ask God right now together, is there a way out of this fear? Is there a way out of this? And they said, okay, well, you lead that. Because they didn't know God could do that. And so we did it together. And by dawn, the sun was coming up. I have this picture. I have a picture of this. The lead guy, 18 hours before, is telling me he's going to kill me in the desert, kneels in front of me they were cooking a lamb on the fire, and they cut off a piece of the lamb, and he came up and he knelt in front of me and he held it up to me like this on his knees and said to me, I am so glad that you weren't afraid of me and that you wanted to be my friend. So and he took the whole group out of militant activity, and then they drove us home, dropped us off. The last time I saw him, I was in going through the airport in Istanbul, and I saw him, and he walked past me, and he just stopped, and he looked in my eyes, and he just smiled at me, and he said, thank you. And then so what was I afraid of in that? The same thing every kid is afraid of in a math class. Failure, rejection. I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to let everybody down. It's the same fear we deal with all the time. We just think it's greater in that situation. It's not. Where did I learn not to be afraid of getting in that car? Where I learned not to be afraid that if God asked me to talk to a person that I feel uncomfortable with, that he'll be with me in it. That's you learn in the small events, and you become skilled in it in the small. David is practicing with a slingshot and writing poetry when he's 10 and watching sheep. Every skill he's going to need to be a great king, he's already practicing as an elementary kid. But we don't know because we never ask. We never pay attention to like that kind of thing. But one day, that slingshot protecting sheep is going to be a huge kingdom movement. And then he's going to write the poetry to tell the beauty of it. Fabulous. Beautiful. That's what we should be telling fourth graders and fifth graders.
So true. Anxiety and fear in kids is a huge issue. But when we're talking about people who are watching this, who are dealing with high levels of stress in their life, whether it be from illnesses, caring for elderly parents, caring for special needs children, jobs, not living out their identity, which we'll talk about here in a moment, But I think I hear you saying is that stress that is created, really underlying that is fear. And what we need to be doing is asking ourselves what the actual fear is. So it's not, oh, I'm afraid that I am going to die from the cancer that I have, or, oh, I'm afraid that my mother's going to die. What is the underlying fear? Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely. So like a person called me this a few weeks ago. This person called me and said, hey, my aunt or someone, just her husband just found out, that his illness is terminal. He has days to live or something. They know you, they've heard of you. Would you call her, the wife, and talk to her? And I'm like, okay, so here, as a human, I'm going to call a total stranger who's in probably the worst situation of her life, which is what I learned in the police department. And I'm going to call her out of the blue because she knows my name or whatever. What am I going to say to her? God works all things together. Am I going to give her some trite cliche? That's not human. Why would I be afraid to call her? Because I would be afraid I wouldn't be able to help her. See, the fear, it just shuts down everything. And so I just said, Lord, are you inviting me to call her? I will. Okay, I'm going to call her. What do you want me to say to her? Like, give me the words. Jesus told his disciples, and I think this is a huge point. Jesus didn't come to tell us what to do. Jesus came to show us how to know what to do. That's what he's modeling. He's not giving us a bunch of rules and ways to talk and follow. He's saying, ask me how I know to do the things I'm doing and to say. Ask me how I know to talk to that woman. You guys didn't even see her. Ask me how I know to go across into Gentile territory and take on a demoniac. How do I know to do that? And when I get there, how do I know what to say? That's what he wants the disciples to ask him. And if they do, he says, I only say what I hear the Father saying, and I only do what I see the Father doing. You also can do this. You also can see the Father. You also can hear the Father. He's a paradigm to us. He's not a tool that we use. He's a paradigm. And so when I call, how would Jesus know what to say to the Samaritan? In his humanity, he doesn't know all things because he hears the words of the Father to say to this woman that God created and made. She's not a Samaritan. That's not who she is. She's not a woman. Like all these designations that are hurting her, even in her own view. And so when I call this lady, I just said to her, listen, as a human, I'm sorry for the situation they're in. What I wanted, and her husband, I could hear him breathing next to her. He was awake and he was next to her in the bed, I guess. And I said to her, tell me what you're most afraid of in this situation. What are you afraid of? And she said, I'm afraid he's going to die. And I said, listen, he is going to die. He is going to die. What are you? I'm not asking you that. You're not in charge of that. None of us are. What are you afraid of in this very organic thing that's going to happen? What are you afraid of? And she said, loss. And I said, okay, all right, now there's a difference here. To be sad about loss, beautiful, 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 deep love. Sad. I'm sad that we're going to be not together. But that's not fear. What are you afraid of when you say the word loss? That somebody is losing. That we're losing. And God's not winning. We are losing and something's wrong. And then I said, okay, good. Okay, so you're afraid that something's being irrevocably lost, that it's a failure. Right. And I said, okay, let's ask God what he wants you, for your husband's right there. Let's ask God what he wants you to know about your view of failure and loss, and where did you learn it? And when the Lord spoke to her in that, it took away her fear. It took away her fear. It didn't magically change the situation that she's in. It transformed her. And she started to cry and she said, we're not losing, are we? And I said, never, never. Nobody did anything wrong here to cause this, right? No. Is this irrevocable separation happening? No, it's not. There's no even separation happening here at all. But this is the lie we believe. And this is what hurts us and makes us feel that to die is to fail. We still believe this. To die means you didn't win. Like you did something wrong. God didn't win. Because if he won, what would happen? We'd never be sick and die. Like we know that's not true, but it's a lie that we believe. And so once she got to that place, and I could hear her husband going, yes, yes, And I said, okay, so now ask God what he wants to know about you. He's got your husband. Clearly they're like together on this. What is he? And the Lord said to her, you're not dying. You're alive. Let's go. Your husband is wrapping things up. Well done. You're not done. Let's go together. Let's move forward together. And I said, it's like you're parting for the summer. Give him a kiss. He's going over there. You're going over here. Don't die in the room. You don't die in the room. Live. And that's what I'm saying to people is like that. You're not losing. We're not losing. Jesus is never in a win-lose scenario ever. And he's never in a situation where he thinks, wow, this could really go south on me. If he was, he would be stressed out all the time. But because we always think we're in win-lose situations, as soon as I think there's a potential loss here, like I'm going to fail or it's going to blow up and it's going to ruin people, you cannot operate in your true identity. You have to immediately self-protect and self-promote. Once you do that, the fear starts because it's like your spirit's going, this is the wrong way to think about this. This is the wrong way to think about this. And the internal conflict begins and it actually creates external conflict. But the piece is like, no, you're not going to lose here. You're not going to lose here. You're not going to lose. You can't lose. The Lord is with you. Walk with him through it.
Let's take that into what you do with people and identity versus purpose, because I think a lot of people are stressed out and stuck in a situation, in a job, in a relationship, whatever it might be. And I often talk to people about trying to find their purpose is based on their core values and what they're supposed to be doing. And if they're following the Lord's plan, you take that to a different level of it's not necessarily purpose, it's identity and how the two work together. And how do we figure that out, Jamie?
So one thing that you have, so in God's reality, whether you believe in God or not, we still live in a certain reality. And in the reality that we're in, the only organizing principle for any living organism is identity. There is no other organizing principle from a cell to a nation. The only thing we can organize around is not what we do, it's who we are. Because being informs doing all the time. So you can't get your identity from doing. You can't. The being is what informs what you do. So like a healthy cell operates in a very distinct way. A cancerous cell is parasitic and destroys everything around it. They're the same cell with very different identities. One is true and authentic. The other is corrupted and self-focused, right? So being is the most important thing to understand. So I can watch a person in their purpose going, they don't know their identity. What they think their purpose is. Because what's the purpose of cancer? What's the purpose of a healthy cell? The healthy cell's purpose is to die and to live its life for the benefit of everything around it. That's a healthy cell. That's its purpose, is to give the gift of itself to the good of the other. That's its purpose. That's a human being's purpose. So where I do that vocationally, that's really a matter of, my identity happens to be a militant peacemaker. I'm an untier of knots. This is what the State Department would say about me. It's not what just God says about me. It's what they would say. Yeah, that's exactly what he does. So once I understand my identity, then the question is, where is that identity most alive and free to move? Where is it the greatest gift in action? That identity, not what it does. It's just, and choose. So if I'm a militant peacemaker, if you put me in a peaceful situation where there's no conflict, I atrophy. But see, it's not brave for me to go overseas into conflict. It's the greatest joy of my identity. My identity comes alive there. And so a person looks at me and they say, oh, wow, you're brave. You live over there. Then you're comparing yourself to me. And that's already a loss. You're already lost. Unfortunately, that's how our culture works. It's compare and they're braver and they're more spiritual. And so being informs doing. So the most important question you're ever going to ask God is, who am I? Once you understand who he made you to be, you pretty much don't even have to ask what to do. Because you will be that thing wherever you are. So if you put me as a greeter at Walmart, in a matter of days, I will have figured out what conflicts are going on in that Walmart. because that's who I am, right? So, or you put me in the Middle East, it's no different. And the source of conflict in the Walmart is exactly the same as it is in Gaza. It's no different. It's just way further more destructive and operating in absolute terror. In Walmart, they've got coping mechanisms working, but they're not healthy. And so in our country, we just have mass school shootings. That's what we do. Over there, they just outright fight. In our country, we're trying to figure out, even as believers, let's just figure out how we can hope that never happens in my school. We've given up on why is it even happening? And when you interview shooters, that identity is broken and fractured. That's what happens. And we're going to try and stop what they're doing. You'll never stop what they're doing because their being is informing that. But you could get alone with them and say, tell me what you're afraid of. And this is what terrorists always say, and shooters. We're powerless and alone in our world. Nobody cares about us. We're invisible. Nobody sees us. People think we're stupid. People think we're not human. And so we have two options. We either curl up in the basement and play video games and kill ourselves, or we wrap a bomb around ourselves and go into a marketplace and kill ourselves, or we go out and make them look at us. We go out and make them see us, and we establish our own power. Both are deadly. But the lie is, I'm unseen, I'm unwanted, and nobody cares. So I'm either going to die invisible, or I'm going to make myself visible. The enemy will take either way on that lie. So when you're with a kid, it takes a kid years to get to the point of, I'm going to go shoot the place up. Where is everybody? Where are all the people? And where are the believers? Because for me, I'm just confessing for myself. I don't pay attention to other people. I'm too self-absorbed. Why? Because I'm self-protecting and self-promoting. Why? Because God's not going to do it, is he? Is he really?
I feel like we do feel that. Even somebody who I would consider myself a high-performing Christian, I still take back control. I still feel like, okay, but you're not actually right here in my finances, in my kids' health right now, God. So I'm going to be behind the scenes controlling and manipulating. Do you think that, and I wrestle with this myself, do you think that control is a word that is of the Lord, or is that something that we've created?
No, I think it's we've created it, even to the thing where we'll say something like, and this hurts us, that God is in control. Even when we make a statement like that.
Right. I don't think that's even true.
True. Yeah. There's nowhere in scripture where you get like God's manipulating this and moving that. And he's not doing that. Here's what God did. Here's what he created Adam and Eve, humanity. He gave them identity. He gave them our identities were named after God. Every identity we have is an identity that he would call himself, of every human. Whatever he says about, whenever you ask the Lord, who do you say that I am? He names us after himself. You're my daughter. You're my beloved. You're my militant peacemaker. They're his qualities expressed out into the world. And the goal of our life is to live out that identity in reflection of who God is. We're the image of that. And so God is not up there controlling everything. What he's saying is, I'm giving you identity. I am with you. You have the mind of Christ. You have the spirit of the living God. And I'm inviting you to be who you are into life. Follow me, and I will make you to become fishers of men or militant. But follow me, and I will make you to become. And so the key is believe and follow. Believe and follow. And as you follow him, and you get scared, and you struggle, and you suffer, those are the places where you dig into, wow, what is it that I don't believe here about God? So Jesus learned obedience through what he suffered, says the scriptures. To obey in Hebrew is to hear and respond. Jesus learned in his humanity to hear and respond to God through what he suffered. Of course. Otherwise, so you fail a test. Okay. I did this with my kids all the time. You failed a test. Okay. What do you believe about yourself based on that? What do you believe about yourself based on that? That I'm stupid. Okay, we're not going to have that lie. That I'm not good at math. We reject that lie. That I need to work harder. There you go. There you go. That I need to go to bed early.
And that's the same thing. That's the same thing if you fail at a business. If you fail on a diet, it's the same.
Right.
All of these things.
Right.
Jamie, when I go to a quiet time or I go to prayer or day in and day out, how do I use what you have so graciously given all of us? Lord, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? How do I use that in my day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's funny because like just even though we're doing this over, this media, I feel like, think I feel you. Like I have a sense, it's
Love
energizing. It's very energizing and it's very beautiful. So like confession, truth telling is the absolute lifeblood. Confession, truth. So when you come into your time with the Lord, wherever that is, which, is really all the time, but if you have a special time, you come in there and just say, Lord, is there anything in my life that prevents me from receiving all that you have for me? Is there any way I think? Is there anything that prevents me from receiving all that you have for me? Because when the only way into the kingdom is receiving, like receiving is our greatest capacity as humans. And kids are made to receive. That's why they're so vulnerable, because humans are made to receive. Like receive the beauty of the day, receive the day. Don't try and rearrange the day. Don't try and control the day. Receive it. Let it come as it comes. Embrace it as it comes and find the beauty in the day, even in the suffering. If we encounter suffering, which we will do, and we try and resist the suffering, fight the suffering, then it becomes tragic. Then it becomes painful because now we're in a fight. And Jesus says about the cross, the joy set before him, he endured the cross. He saw it as a way forward into the name above all names. And so he says, shall I not drink the cup the Father is offering? These guys aren't going to murder me. That's the lie. They're not going to murder me. That's what we say. They're falsely accusing me. I've got to fight that. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? That's why he can go, and he doesn't love it. I mean, he asks if there's another way. But so when you encounter, how many times we failed? I've been arrested multiple times in foreign countries for making wrong decisions on, Lord, are you going? And then when I'm in the position of going to prison in some foreign country, my question isn't like, I hate these people because they falsely accused me and they're going to put me in prison and let's rally the Christian world against this. Like, that's all ridiculous. It's like I sit there in that situation and going, Lord, I'm sad I'm in this position, but what do you want me to know and what do you want me to do here? Like, how do you bring beauty out of these ashes? How do you turn failure into beauty? Like, show me the way to that. So Jesus didn't come so we didn't have to suffer anymore. He came to show us how to suffer well.
And we can always cut this part out if you don't want to talk about it, but it wasn't just because people look at you and what you've done and be like, everything you've done though was Christ ordained. Like you were following hard after the Lord. You went through addiction. You failed in just life. And I think a lot of the people who are listening right now and watching that are in those places, are in addiction, whether it be substance, whether it be shopping, whether it be fear. And God brought you through that.
That's right. Yeah. And he did it. Yeah. I mean, I only talk about this when someone directly asks me about it because I don't like to glamorize failure. I don't like when Christians glamorize failure. It's a painful process, quite beautiful as you go through it, and I love being with people as they try and wrestle through this stuff. But yeah, I mean, I can remember how all this is the same thing. When I was raised, in a strict independent Baptist mom. And so everything was fear, guilt, and shame. Everything about God was fear, guilt, and shame. All of it. And God was mad all the time. And
which is a huge deprogramming for a lot of the world, I will tell you.
Yeah. And Jesus was there as for God to pour out all of his hostility on, except not quite all of it, because he's still mad at me. So it worked for 90% of the madness, wrath of God, but not all of it, because a lot of it's still aimed at me, as my mom would say. And my mom would say things to me like, and she wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to help. She was doing what she knew to do. So that's forgiveness. It's like she did what she tried to know how to do. And she was afraid I was going to be wayward. And so she would say to me, if you don't want to be in this Bible study, which I didn't, she would say, you're disappointing God. God's disappointed and I'm disappointed. And so what I pulled out of that is the identity, I'm a disappointment. That's what kids do. That's we failed a test. What does that mean? I'm a failure. That is the lie that destroys a human, because then you will become the failure, or you will spend your whole life trying to prove that you're not a failure, but still failure is the driving identity. Yeah. And so you can always see it in people. The fear produces pride. Fear makes a person braggadocious. And the more proud a person is, the deeper their fear. And so my mom says that about me, and like, I don't know how to get out of the I'm a disappointment, because, God searches your mind and every evil thought and is going to be revealed. And I'm like, how do I get rid of the evil thoughts? I can't do it. So there's no way out of the trap of I'm a disappointment. Yeah, validated every single day of my life. And so at 15, I just was out with these guys and they were drinking, and they handed me the bottle and said, drink this. And I took a drink. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't a disappointment. I could feel it. I'm like, I'm free. And there's the great lie, that there's a way out of the fear apart from God. And that's how substance abuse and all these other coping mechanisms happen. Or I go to church 10 times a week. It's just a coping mechanism, right?
Or I over-exercise, or I over-control and over-plan.
Right. Right. And so for years and years, and I learned how to use the coping mechanisms that we all learn how to use to navigate life, so we don't ever have to really face the truth of I hate myself. Why? Because I'm a disappointment, and I know it. And every time I take a drink, it validates I'm a disappointment, but I can't feel it as much, right? Like that thing. So when you go into a quiet time, you don't want to go into a quiet time, I'm a disappointment, and you're praying to have a quiet time so you won't be a disappointment anymore. It's already the same lie, because works don't save you, right? And so when I finally because the Lord, through all the years of the alcohol and all that stuff, I was still successful in my job, but the Lord was always with me. I knew he was, and he would look at me and he would go, let me know when you want to be done with this. I'm right here. I will never leave you. I'm sad. You're hurting your wife. You're hurting your kids, but I will never leave you. And I'm proud of you. And I'm not disappointed in you. And I never have been. That's the grace of God. That is the love that's and living in his forgiveness in the midst of the wrongdoing. His forgiveness is just pouring. So beautiful and compelling. And so
there is literally nothing you can do to separate yourself from that love, no matter how hard you are on yourself or how bad of a thing that you've done. He will always be there waiting.
That's right. Nothing can separate you from the love of God that's in Christ Jesus. No created thing, Paul says. Sin is a creation that I'm creating in my own life. That created thing cannot separate me from the love of God that's in Christ Jesus. But he's sad for me. He's with me. I mean, I can remember one time driving and I've been drinking, and I just looked over, like he was right there, and he just was looking at me with these watery eyes, and he was going, let me know. Because he said, let me know, because if you weren't afraid, you would not believe the things that I would invite you into, but you're too afraid. And I can't invite a disappointment into it, but I can invite a militant peacemaker. Which one do you want to be? And so, over time, then, he really, and some great friends and my amazing wife went into rehab. And the whole rehab was based on the Lord saying, just stay clear-minded enough to tell the truth about what you're most afraid of. And I know the exact memory that was the most painful. And it was I couldn't even think about it. It was so painful, something that I had done. And I told my wife in the rehab, I said, I need to tell you about one thing in particular. And I'm like, it's going to take everything I have to say it to you. And so she was horrified. And the thing I told her, she didn't know it was the thing. She's like, okay, I'm ready. And I just said it. And she goes, that's it. It's these little moments way back where the lie takes hold. And you embrace the lie and you start to live it. And then all the rest of this out here is all just as a result of that. There it is. There's the day that you started to believe that you were a disappointment. There it is. There's the day. And I just wept at believing it. I was so sad that I believed it. And the Lord was, on the day that I made this decision, it was just a decision about a little job I was doing. It didn't seem important. And I felt like I needed to leave the job and just do something else, but I didn't want it. I can't disappoint people. Can't disappoint them. I can't. So I'm not free. So it seems noble. It's like, I can't leave this little job because I'll disappoint that guy and I have a responsibility to make him, blah, blah, blah. And so on the day that it happened, and as the Lord was walking me through the memory, I could see Jesus with me in that time. And I said, what did you want me to do? He said, I was inviting you out of the job. I was inviting you away. And I said, what did you want to do? And he said, go play. I wanted to go play together. but you think that if this guy's life's going to be affected, if you do, he goes, I'll take care of that guy. I wanted you to come play with me. And I've never forgotten that. What is the Lord inviting me into? He wants me to play with him. But man, does he play serious games. He plays super serious games. But if you know the infinite and finite game, in the finite game, there's a time limit, there's good guys and bad guys, and there's winners and losers. But in the infinite game, the goal is to get everyone in the game. The game lasts forever, and everyone plays with joy. So when I got into the car with those guys, they're in the finite game. It's winners and losers, and there's limited time. And Jesus is saying to me, invite them into the infinite game. Invite them into the infinite game that you're in. But a disappointment's in the finite game, and I don't have anywhere to invite anybody. So I invite these people, let's play the infinite game. And in the infinite game, there's no winner. We all win, and we play forever, and we're filled with joy. And man, it'll challenge every part of who you are.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
So
how do we know if we're hearing the Lord when we're asking him, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? How do we know that we're hearing him as opposed to our own to-do list in our head?
Yeah, I think, again, the paradigm of Jesus, right? Jesus, Philippians chapter 2, he didn't consider heaven something to be held for his own, but he self-emptied. It wasn't taken away from him. He didn't sacrifice. He emptied himself. It's a very beautiful word. To self-empty. God's not ripping it away and demanding sacrifice. He's inviting you into something that will allow you to empty yourself. What? Why? For the benefit of the other. So whatever's going through my mind, it should match Jesus' example of other-focused, self-emptying, unconditional love for my enemy. That's the high bar. So are these ideas that I'm coming up with in these plans, number one, are they other-focused? That's number one. Are they other-focused?
Wow, service.
Are they self-emptying? And it could be anything. It could be an accountant. It could be the vocation doesn't matter. It's the identity in the vocation that matters. That's the beauty of the whole thing. So if I lose this job or this doesn't work, you don't lose your identity, especially our young people that work with us. I tell them, listen, you have to learn. When you go, we call different scenarios rooms. When you go into this room, when you go into that room, you cannot get identity in the room and you cannot lose identity in the room. When you go into the room, you bring your identity into the room, you maintain your identity into the room, and you leave with your identity. If you understand that, you are free to go into any scenario in life and you will be fine. But if you get your identity from the result in that room, you're already dead. You've already lost. Or if they can take it from you, you've already lost. Right? So that's the freedom of, I am alive in Christ. I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, the selfish, but Christ lives in me. What Christ has done when he made me lives in me. And that's what rules. And so when I'm praying and I have an idea like, let's start a company, whatever it is, we're really going after human traffickers right now. And so when we're praying about it, it's like, God, show us a way to do this that works. Because most of us have totally given up on all this stuff. We've given up on school shootings. We're just going to go to war. That's all we've decided we're going to do. We're going to fight the bad guys. We're going to lock them all up. We're going to kill them. But we're not going to reconcile anything anymore. So everything's going to turn into a fort and a gun. So show us a way to go back at this like Jesus would go back at it. And then we have these ideas. I was just talking to one of our guys that's out working in the field, remarkable. And so we have all kinds of ideas. Let's start a company there. Let's go in and get into the school system here and start an educational program over here. They're all great ideas. Are they other focused? Are they self-emptying? Is it unconditional love, even for the people that we consider our enemies? Is that the heart behind it? Because the only two primal motivators in a human being are love and fear. Those are the only two that we have. And perfect love casts out the fear. So whatever we're doing is either because of love or fear. Wow. That's what to keep going back to that and asking the Lord those deep questions is really beautiful.
How can you help somebody who's watching? What are you doing? You're working with the identity, you're working through fear. And with what you're doing, is that going to help people reduce their stress?
Yeah. Well, so what we're doing at an identity exchange, we have this we have a company and we have a nonprofit, and we work with helping people and organizations discover their identity. Like I said earlier, the only organizing principle is identity. Whether you're talking to a sixth grader or a CEO, they're no different. Or a Muslim or an atheist, they're all the same. They're all dealing with this wrong sense of identity. And so our whole thing is, like, whatever we're going to do, identity is the primer that makes all other things work. You can put the most expensive paint on a wall that there is, and it'll peel off eventually. But you prime that wall, and even less expensive paint will stick forever. It's the primer. What's the primer? Your identity is the primer. And then everything else God wants to invite into you, every other course you take, every other training you go through. It's remarkable that beautiful training, whether it's special forces or accounting or whatever it is, goes over that gorgeous identity and it shuffles. But you paint that training over a false identity, it's not going to last. It can't cover it. So that's what we do. We call ourselves the primer to all other kind of learning and training, just because we want to train the real you. The real you is magnificent, beautiful. And I'll say one thing about that is, like, that's why the great commandment is so important. When Jesus says, when they ask him, what's the great, he says, love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor in the same way that you love yourself. And I always ask people, do you love God with your heart, mind, soul, all your heart, mind, soul, and strength? I don't even know what that means. What is Jesus telling us to do? To love a God we've never seen, that we can't really imagine, with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength? That's impossible. He can't mean love that guy over there he can't mean that. He means something much greater than that. What's he saying? God is love. Here's what he's saying. Love the God who is love. Love with everything that you have. How do you love love? By participating in love, by abiding in that love all the time. What's the first step? Love what love did when love made you. Love what love did when love made you. Because if you don't love that, you're not participating in the love of God. So when you look in that mirror, you need to learn, because you've learned to not love it. You were taught not to love yourself because you're ugly and you're a failure and you're all that. Learn to believe about yourself what God says about you. Learn to believe. That's what Jesus is always telling the disciples. Why don't you have faith in what God thinks about you? Why don't you believe what I say about you? It's not like just have this random abstract faith to do great things. No, believe what I say about you. Jesus looks at me and goes, why do you call yourself an alcoholic? Like, why don't you call yourself what I call you? If you called yourself what I call you, you wouldn't need any of this other stuff. So learn to love what God did when God made you. And when you start to love that, then you can love what God did when love made that neighbor or that trafficker or that Muslim. Then you will. But before then, this is the greatest commandment, and everything else will come out of it. And so that's our goal is, why don't I love myself? Why don't I love who I am? Why don't I love God? Why don't I love my neighbor? Because I have a wrong view of God, a wrong view of myself, if there's a wrong view of my neighbor. So the Bible is so beautiful on this stuff, so gorgeous. But we just turned it into a separation rule book, right? So, man,
what is one thing that all of my viewers could do today after listening to you in the car, wherever they're at home? What's one thing they can do to help reduce their stress when it comes to, or what is the Lord telling you to tell them?
Fix your eyes on Jesus. Fix your eyes on Jesus. So Jesus is the exact representation of the invisible God. So if I want to encounter God, Jesus said, if you see me, you're seeing God. So fix your eyes, fix your imagination on the visible, the incarnate part of the God. Fix your eyes on Jesus. He's the author and the perfecter of everything you'll ever believe that's true. Fix your eyes on him and ask him questions. What am I afraid of? Don't tell him what you're afraid of. Ask him what you're afraid of. You're going to give him some surface thing. He's going to go deep. Ask him, and he might say, you're afraid of me. He might say that. Like, where did I learn to be afraid of you? Vacation Bible School or wherever. And so fixing your eyes on Jesus and constantly abiding in Christ, asking him questions. Why am I afraid right now? And learn to do it just regularly. And then these moments when you have this inexpressible joy, then you can look at Jesus. I actually this whole time, I go right there, that, hold that right there, keep that one. Because why does that one go so fast and the fear just stuck? Like, why can't that joy thing It's this constant, like, let me feel that kind of love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, jealousy. Let that be the pattern of my life. But that's what I would say. Fix your eyes on Jesus. And typically the question is, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? Where did I learn the fear? Can you exchange my fear for your love? And cast your care on him and cast your burden on him. Truth tell.
One of the best things that everybody can do right now is go deeper with what you're talking about. Spend more time, commit that time. I know everybody says, oh, I don't have enough time, I'm so busy, but spending more time doing exactly what Jamie is saying will just transform your world.
Right. And you practice in the silence, but that's not where you're going to stay. Like, you practice in the silence, you practice in the quiet, in order that when you get out in the storms, you're doing it in the storm. You don't have to keep running back to the quiet, but you train in the quiet. You train in the police academy. You train.
That's really good.
But not so to stay there. And you don't leave the ward. I got to go back to boot camp again. Hold on, give me an hour. I got to get away with Jesus. It's like, no. Learn to hear that voice now in the quiet. My example always is when I was a rookie cop, the first on the street, my FTO, my training officer said, you got to hear the radio all the time. You have to hear it. And they're going to call your number. It's 520. Well, there's zillions of people talking on the radio. It's massive, the police department. To hear the number 520 amidst 526, 27, 28, 20, all the numbers that are going around all the time and the codes. I'm like, how do you do that? He goes, listen. So we would go to a parking lot on midnight, and I would just put my ear down by the radio. And I would go, they said my number. He's like, good, beautiful, good. He said, and then one time he said, they've called you 3 times. And I said, no, they haven't. So if he put me on a lie detector and they asked me if he called me, I would say no, and I'd be telling the truth, but I'm still wrong. They did call me. Do you see? We think God didn't talk. I would have heard it. No, you're not listening. And so anyway, you practice and practice and practice, and I can hear 520. If my wife wants to wake me up in the middle of the night, all she has to do is go 520. And my whole system comes alive. This is how God works.
Oh, that you're so sensitized to God speaking. I always tell people that he's not going to shout past your busyness. So I'm encouraging people to get still and to get quiet. But what you're saying is, yeah, you get still and you get quiet so you recognize it. And then you can hear him through the busyness because you understand his voice.
That's right. It cuts through all of this. So like when I'm in the car, not the fear of you're going to die and these guys can kill you and all that swirling around. It's this I recognize his voice so quick. It's just very simple and straightforward. Do you want me to get in the car? Yes. And I can say, well, what about, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Well, whatever. Yes. 520, get in the car. So then, yeah.
Jamie, so good.
Yeah.
Where is the best place for people to go deeper, to find you, to learn more, to hear more? I will tell you, go back and binge any podcast he's been on or go hear him speak because he's full of stories that will just hit home. But where should they go?
Yeah, identityexchange.com is our website. Lots of good resources there. We have lots of good coaches that you can talk with and courses that you can engage in, all centered around what we're talking about here. And yeah, there's just resources there. And we just came out with, for the book Living Fearless, that book is there too. But then this is just this is a journal. This is what I would recommend you do as the word discipleship is to discipline. So when you're being disciplined with God or discipled by him, there's just practices you want to do that become the way you live. And then when you understand that, then God says, okay, now let's go here. And then let's go here. And he's never done inviting you to deeper and deeper and higher levels with him as long as you say yes. He's not going to drag you, but he's always like, hey, do you want to go see something really crazy? You think Iraq was crazy? Come with me to Gaza. You think that was crazy? Come with me to Kingsport, Tennessee, which is wild because now we live in this little tiny town in Tennessee. It is the most challenging place we've ever lived. That's the lie. It's like, I'm like, come live in the mentality of Appalachia. You want to see an entire population that believes a collective lie and they can't break out of it, get in those schools. It's like, wow, this is just so indoctrinated in this idea of like, we're not smart and we live in a little town, nobody cares. Like, it's the same lie everywhere you go. So the Lord's, he's like, never tell the Lord what's a hard place and what's an easy place.
He'll show you. His plans are always better. The book, Living Fearless, is a wonderful book. It's easy to read, which I think is really important because sometimes we don't go after books that are super, super helpful because we're like, I just don't have time and bandwidth for it. But it's a great one. It's going to touch you. And everybody knows how I feel about journaling. It is one of the most important and most impactful thing you can in your relationship with the Lord, but also to get healthy for your mental health, to have less stress. So please, please, please grab the journal and follow and find Jamie. I am so blessed by you, continue to learn from you. So thank you so much for blessing us with your time. And God bless you and your wife and your family, the grandbaby, everybody in your next.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be with you.
Wow. Wow. Jamie and I stopped recording and then proceeded to talk for another 30 minutes because the Lord is just working. I cannot tell you how blessed I was by his conversation, and I hope that you were blessed by this conversation as well. What you missed, and I wish that I would have recorded at the end, was me going into how my identity for the last 13 years has kind of been and revolved around being that girl at QVC. And I know that that's wrong. I know that my identity isn't being a QVC host. Just like my identity isn't being a mom, which for the longest time, especially when I was dealing with infertility and adoption, that's what I felt like it was. Like, that's what I wanted my identity to be. My identity is in Christ. It comes from, and we unpack this a little bit, being a giver of joy, being able to bring joy to others, and that coming through me, through the Lord. But I think that many of you may be confused about what your identity is, what your purpose is. And first, it's identity. Jamie asked me, when the cameras weren't rolling, what do you hear God saying? What do you hear him saying when you ask that question? What am I? And my answer was, I'm a child of the Lord. But there's more than that. Of course, that should be the first thing that you answer, is that I am a child of the Lord. But I encourage you to do the same thing. Ask yourself, what am I, Lord? How do you see me? And then listen, be able to listen to him and be able to understand his voice so that when you're in those times of extreme stress and extreme pain and extreme grief, you can hear it through there as well. So do the work, get his journal, start journaling on your own, but work on your identity. What is it? What are you hearing from the Lord? Your purpose. And really use that in any situation that you have. He's fantastic. I want to have him back. I want you all to go learn from him. And I pray that you were as blessed by that conversation today as I was. Now remember how worthy you are, how loved you are, and take that into your day today. God bless.
Coming up on the next episode of StRest, you